AITA 4, ruining my boyfriend's birthday dinner because I didn't agree to pay for everyone. I've been dating my boyfriend, Ryan, for about a year now. I'm 20, and he's 21. Overall, our relationship has been good, at least I thought so. He has his quirks, but don't we all? Anyway, his birthday was coming up, and I wanted to do something really special for him. He's always been the type to complain that people don't go out of their way for him on his birthday, so I figured this year, I would change that. I told him I wanted to take him out to a nice dinner, just the two of us, and that I would treat him for his birthday. I was excited about it, and he seemed just as excited. He kept talking about how sweet I was for planning it and how he couldn't wait for the night. I made reservations at a nice restaurant, not super fancy, but definitely nicer than what we usually go to. I planned my outfit carefully, picked out a dress I knew he liked, and spent extra time on my hair and makeup. I wanted to make it special for him. The day of the dinner, everything seemed fine. I texted him earlier in the day to confirm the time, and he replied enthusiastically. I arrived at the restaurant first, feeling nervous but happy. When Ryan walked in, I immediately noticed that he wasn't alone. Behind him were his best friend, Matt, and Matt's girlfriend, Sarah. I was taken aback. He hadn't mentioned anything about them coming. My first thought was that maybe they just ran into each other and came in to say hi. But then I noticed they were all dressed up too, and it quickly became clear that they were there for dinner with us. I plastered on a smile, even though I was feeling a little uneasy. Ryan hugged me, sat down, and acted like nothing was out of the ordinary. I didn't want to make a scene, so I decided to go along with it. Maybe it would still be fun, right? A couple's dinner isn't what I had planned, but I figured I could make the best of it. Things started out fine. We ordered drinks, and the conversation was flowing. But then Matt and Sarah began ordering appetizers. And not just one or two. They ordered several. And drinks, lots of drinks. At first, I thought they were just splurging on their own tab. But as the evening went on, I started to panic a little. I realized that Ryan had not only invited them without telling me, but he also hadn't told them that I wasn't planning to cover their meals. It started to hit me that they all assumed I was footing the bill. I tried to keep calm, but I was quietly stressing out. I'm a college student. I work part-time, and while I can afford a nice dinner for two, this was way beyond my budget. I couldn't even enjoy my meal because I was doing mental math the entire time. By the time the main courses came out, I knew the bill was going to be insane. At one point, Ryan leaned over to me and said with a smile, "Don't forget, you said you'd cover it." He said it casually, like it was no big deal. My stomach dropped. I told him that I had agreed to pay for his dinner because it was his birthday, not for an entire table, especially not for people I didn't even know were coming. He gave me a look, like I was the one being unreasonable. "It's rude to invite people to dinner and not pay for them," he said. I was stunned. I stared at him for a moment, trying to process what he had just said. I whispered back, "It's even ruder to invite people to a dinner that someone else is paying for without telling them." At that point, I was fuming. I didn't want to ruin the evening any more than it already was, so I went quiet and just waited for the bill to come. When the server finally brought it, I was already prepared for the awkwardness. I took the bill, scanned it, and paid for my meal and Ryan's. Then I handed it back to the server and said, "They'll cover the rest." The look on Matt and Sarah's faces was priceless. They were completely shocked, like I had just insulted them in the worst way possible. Matt said, "Wait, you're not paying for us." And Sarah muttered something about how embarrassing it was for the server to see this happening. I was so over it by that point. I calmly said, "I never agreed to pay for your meals. I didn't even know you were coming." Ryan was furious. He glared at me and said, "You're so cheap. You just ruined my birthday." I didn't even respond. I just sat there in silence while Matt begrudgingly pulled out his card to pay for their part of the bill. The whole table was tense, and I just wanted to disappear. After the check was settled, I made some excuse about needing to leave and walked out. Ryan didn't even walk me to my car. He stayed behind with Matt and Sarah, probably to complain about me. Since that night, things have been awful. Ryan has been giving me the cold shoulder. When I try to text him, he either doesn't reply or sends short, passive-aggressive messages about how I embarrassed him in front of his friends. He keeps calling me cheap and saying I ruined his birthday. I tried to apologize at first, but he wasn't interested in hearing it. At this point, it's been a week, and he still hasn't made any effort to talk things out. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and honestly, I feel like I didn't do anything wrong. I planned a nice dinner for us. I wanted to make his birthday special. But instead, he blindsided me, put me in an uncomfortable position, and then made me feel like I was the bad guy for setting a boundary. I've been replaying it in my head over and over, wondering if I should have just sucked it up and paid for the whole thing. But why should I? That wasn't what I agreed to, and it wasn't fair of him to put me in that situation. Now, I'm seriously considering breaking up with him. This isn't just about the dinner. It's about the way he's treated me since then. The silent treatment, the name-calling, the complete lack of understanding, it's all making me question whether this relationship is worth it. I don't want to be with someone who disrespects me and makes me feel small. I loved him, but this whole situation has shown me a side of him that I don't think I can ignore. Am I overreacting? Is this breakup worthy? Or should I try harder to work things out? I'd love to hear your advice because I'm honestly feeling so lost right now. Update 1. First of all, I want to thank everyone who responded to my original post. Honestly, reading through the comments was an emotional roller coaster. A lot of you validated my feelings and helped me realize that what happened wasn't okay, and for that, I'm truly grateful. Some of you also encouraged me to give Ryan one last chance to talk things out before making any big decisions. While part of me felt like I already knew the answer, I decided to take that advice. I thought, at the very least, I owed it to myself to hear his side one more time before officially walking away. So, I reached out to Ryan and asked if we could meet in person to talk. It took a while for him to respond, and when he finally did, he seemed reluctant but agreed. We decided to meet at a nearby coffee shop. I was nervous as I walked in, but I also felt a strange sense of determination. I knew this conversation could either clarify everything or confirm that it was time for me to move on. When I arrived, Ryan was already there, sitting at a table with his arms crossed. His body language screamed defensiveness, which didn't exactly set the stage for a productive conversation. I sat down and started by telling him that I wanted to clear the air about what happened during his birthday dinner. I explained how I felt blindsided, disrespected, and embarrassed by the whole situation and how his behavior afterward only made things worse. I kept my tone calm and measured, but inside, my heart was pounding. Ryan didn't say much at first. He just shrugged and gave me that same dismissive attitude he'd been giving me all week. He said he still didn't understand why I was making such a big deal out of it. That response alone was enough to make me question why I'd even bother trying to talk to him. But I pressed on. I asked him directly why he invited Matt and Sarah in the first place when he knew the dinner was supposed to be just the two of us. At first, he deflected. He said something vague about how they're his closest friends and that it wouldn't have felt like a real celebration without them. He tried to frame it like it was a totally normal thing to do, but I wasn't buying it. I kept pushing for a real answer, and eventually, after some awkward back and forth, he finally admitted the truth. Apparently, Ryan had mentioned our dinner plans to Matt a week before his birthday. Matt, upon hearing that we were going to a nice restaurant, said something along the lines of, "Oh, that sounds fun. We should join you guys." Instead of shutting that down and explaining that it was meant to be a private dinner I was treating him to, Ryan felt awkward about saying no. He just went along with it. He told Matt and Sarah the time and place and didn't bother to mention it to me. In Ryan's mind, it was easier to avoid an uncomfortable conversation with Matt than to prioritize my plans and my feelings. What really got me, though, was the part that came next. Ryan admitted that Matt and Sarah had specifically said they didn't want to miss out on the fancy dinner. That's right, they invited themselves, fully expecting that I would cover the bill. Ryan knew this and still didn't say anything to me. He didn't try to set any boundaries with them, didn't warn me ahead of time, and didn't even feel bad about it afterward. He had just assumed I would be fine footing the bill because it was his birthday. And to top it all off, he genuinely didn't think it was a big deal. I sat there in disbelief as he told me all of this, like it was the most normal thing in the world. He wasn't apologetic. If anything, he seemed annoyed that I was making him explain himself. I realized in that moment that this wasn't just about the dinner. This was about who Ryan was as a person. He had no problem throwing me under the bus to avoid a slightly awkward situation with his friends. He didn't care how his actions affected me, and he didn't take responsibility for any of it. It was all about him, his comfort, and his convenience. That was it for me. I told him I couldn't be with someone who prioritized avoiding conflict with his friends over being honest with me. I told him I deserved better than to be disrespected and taken advantage of, and I was done. Ryan, true to form, didn't take it well. He accused me of overreacting and being dramatic. He tried to downplay everything, saying it wasn't a big deal and I was blowing it out of proportion. But his words didn't matter anymore. I had already made up my mind. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, relief, but mostly, I felt free. Free from someone who didn't value me the way I deserved to be valued. Free from the stress of trying to justify my feelings to someone who refused to see my perspective. Free from a relationship that had become one-sided and exhausting. In the days that followed, I started to process everything more clearly. I realized how much I had been excusing Ryan's behavior throughout our relationship. This wasn't the first time he had shown a lack of consideration for my feelings, but it was the first time I couldn't ignore it. The birthday dinner fiasco was just the final straw. It opened my eyes to the fact that I was putting in way more effort and care than I was getting in return. Update 2. 2 days after I broke up with Ryan, I started noticing something strange. It began with texts from an unknown number. At first, they were passive-aggressive and petty, saying things like, "It's crazy how some people can't even pay for a birthday dinner," and "cheap people shouldn't date." At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed it was either a random troll or, at worst, someone Ryan had vented to about the breakup. I rolled my eyes, blocked the number, and moved on. But it didn't stop there. The same type of messages started showing up in my social media inboxes. DMs from random accounts on Instagram, vague comments on old photos, even messages on Facebook from people I didn't know. Most of them echoed the same sentiment, accusing me of being cheap, selfish, or ruining someone's birthday. That's when it clicked, this wasn't random. Someone was orchestrating this, and it didn't take long to figure out who. Matt and Sarah had decided to take sides, and, unsurprisingly, it wasn't mine. At first, it was just a few cryptic posts on their Instagram stories, things like, "Some people are so fake," and, "Imagine being so cheap you ruin someone's special day." They didn't tag me, but it was obvious who they were talking about. I ignored it, thinking they'd eventually get bored and move on. But they didn't. Instead, they escalated. One day, Sarah posted an actual status on Facebook, "Nothing worse than someone who promises to pay and then backs out. Some people should learn basic manners." This time, she tagged me. I was mortified. I hadn't even realized she followed me on Facebook, let alone that she'd go to this extent to publicly humiliate me. I ignored the post, thinking it was better not to give them the reaction they were clearly looking for. But Sarah wasn't done. A few days later, she posted a video to Instagram. It was a low-budget, childish reenactment of the birthday dinner. Sarah played me, dramatically whining, "I can't afford this," while fake crying into her hands. Matt played Ryan, rolling his eyes and saying, "Don't worry, babe, I'll cover it." The caption read, "The cheapskate strikes again." I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It felt like something out of a bad high school drama, not the behavior of two adults in their 20s. At that point, I realized this wasn't just petty, it was harassment. I saved every post, every message, every comment, and took screenshots of everything. I wasn't going to engage with them, but I also wasn't going to let them get away with this. The worst part was how public it all was. Mutual friends could see the posts, and while many of them stayed silent, a few reached out to me privately to express their disgust at what Matt and Sarah were doing. One friend even messaged Sarah directly to tell her she was being childish and cruel, which, of course, only made Sarah double down. The final straw came when Ryan himself got involved. I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw it. On one of Sarah's posts about the cheapskate, Ryan had left a comment, "She deserves this." My stomach dropped. I couldn't believe it. This was someone I had cared about for an entire year, someone I had planned to spend my future with. And now, he was not only condoning this behavior but actively encouraging it. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal. Ryan knew me better than anyone else involved. He knew my character, my values, my struggles. And yet, he had no problem throwing me to the wolves because his ego was bruised. I had ended things with him respectfully, even giving him the chance to explain himself before making my decision. This was how he repaid me. At that point, I decided I was done. Done with Ryan, done with Matt and Sarah, and done with anyone who would tolerate or condone their behavior. I blocked all of them on every platform, Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn, just to be safe. I cut ties with mutual friends who didn't support me or thought it was just drama. I refused to let their toxicity seep into my life any longer. But even after blocking them, the damage had been done. The video and posts had circulated enough that people I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out to ask me what happened. I had to explain the story over and over, reliving the humiliation each time. It felt like Ryan and his friends had stolen my narrative and twisted it into something ugly. But I refused to let them define me. I decided to take control of the situation. I reached out to close friends and explained everything in detail, showing them the screenshots and posts. Thankfully, the people who mattered most stood by me. Some even went out of their way to call out Matt and Sarah publicly, which felt validating, but I also didn't want to drag this out into a full-blown social media war. I just wanted it to stop. Eventually, the posts died down. Maybe they got bored, or maybe they realized they weren't getting the reaction they wanted. Either way, I was relieved. But the experience left a scar. It made me question my judgment, my relationships, and even my self-worth. How could I have dated someone like Ryan for a year and not seen this side of him? How could I have let myself get involved with people who would stoop so low? As for Ryan, Matt, and Sarah, I've heard through the grapevine that they've moved on to their next drama. Part of me feels sorry for them, honestly. They clearly thrive on conflict and attention, and I'm glad I'm no longer a part of their toxic cycle. I've moved on, and I'm determined to build a life filled with respect, kindness, and genuine connections. In the end, I'm not a cheapskate, and I never was. I'm just someone who knows her worth, and I'll never let anyone make me feel otherwise again. Update 3. Here's where things took an unexpected and surprisingly insightful turn. About a week after the social media drama had finally died down, I received a message from someone I didn't recognize. At first, I hesitated to even open it. I was wary after everything I'd been through with Ryan, Matt, and Sarah. But curiosity got the better of me. The message was from someone named Lauren, and in the opening line, she introduced herself as Ryan's older sister. I had heard him mention her a few times during our relationship, but we had never met or spoken directly. Lauren's message was long and surprisingly sincere. She said she had recently learned about the situation through Ryan and their family, and she wanted to reach out to apologize, on his behalf. She explained that she had tried talking to Ryan about what had happened, but he refused to take accountability. She said she was furious with him, both for the way he treated me and for how he allowed his friends to disrespect me. She admitted that she felt ashamed of how he'd acted but wanted me to know that not everyone in his life supported his behavior. Then Lauren dropped something that completely floored me. She revealed that this wasn't the first time Ryan had pulled a stunt like this. Apparently, during his last serious relationship, he had done something eerily similar. He had invited a group of his friends to a private event his ex had planned, a romantic getaway for just the two of them, and assumed she would cover the cost for everyone. According to Lauren, that relationship ended shortly afterward for similar reasons: Ryan's inability to set boundaries with his friends and his tendency to take people's generosity for granted. She told me that even as his sister, she found his behavior baffling and infuriating. Lauren's message struck a chord with me. On one hand, it was validating to know that this wasn't some isolated incident or me blowing things out of proportion. On the other hand, it was infuriating to realize that Ryan's pattern of entitlement and carelessness wasn't new. He had been this way for years, and it seemed like no one had ever been able to get through to him. Lauren told me that she hoped I wouldn't let this experience make me cynical about relationships because, as she put it, you deserve someone who respects you and your effort. Her message gave me a sense of closure I didn't know I needed. It confirmed that my feelings were valid and that I wasn't crazy for expecting basic respect in a relationship. I wrote back, thanking her for reaching out and for her kind words. I told her that while I appreciated her message, I wasn't holding my breath for Ryan to change anytime soon. Lauren agreed, saying that while she loved her brother, she wasn't blind to his flaws. She said she hoped he would eventually grow up and learn from his mistakes, but she knew that wasn't something anyone could force him to do. After that exchange, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't about Ryan anymore, it was about me and the life I wanted to build for myself. The dinner incident and everything that followed were just symptoms of a bigger issue, Ryan's lack of respect for me and my boundaries. And if Lauren, someone who had known him his whole life, was willing to acknowledge that, then I felt even more confident in my decision to leave him behind. Since then, I've been focusing on myself. It started with small steps. I began spending more time with friends, catching up with people I had drifted away from during my relationship. I started picking up hobbies I'd neglected, like painting and baking, and found joy in rediscovering the things that made me happy. One weekend, I even treated myself to a solo spa day, a completely indulgent and selfish act of self-care that felt like the ultimate middle finger to all the chaos I had endured. I also started reflecting on the red flags I had overlooked during my time with Ryan. There were moments early on when he had shown hints of entitlement, moments when he had put his friends' needs above mine or brushed off my feelings. At the time, I had written them off as minor issues or told myself that every relationship had its rough patches. But now, with the clarity of hindsight, I could see that those moments were part of a larger pattern. The breakup taught me a valuable lesson about self-respect. It's not just about saying no when someone crosses a line, it's about recognizing the small, subtle ways people show, or fail to show, respect for you on a daily basis. It's about trusting your gut when something feels off and not excusing behavior that makes you feel unappreciated or taken for granted. As for Ryan, I have no idea what he's up to, and I honestly don't care. I've blocked him, Matt, Sarah, and anyone else connected to that toxic circle. I've cut ties with the mutual friends who stayed silent during the drama or tried to tell me to just let it go. The people who matter, the ones who supported me and stood by me, are still in my life, and that's enough. What surprised me most in the weeks following the breakup was how freeing it felt to let go of a relationship that had been weighing me down. I hadn't realized just how much emotional energy I had been pouring into Ryan, trying to make him happy, trying to meet his expectations, trying to convince myself that the relationship was worth it. Letting go felt like exhaling after holding my breath for far too long. One day, while scrolling through my phone, I stumbled across a photo I had taken of the two of us on one of our first dates. We were smiling, arms wrapped around each other, and at the time, I had thought I was the luckiest girl in the world. Looking at it now, I felt nothing. No sadness, no longing, no anger, just indifference. That's when I knew I had truly moved on. I'm not cynical about love, but I'm more careful now. I've learned that effort in a relationship should be mutual, that boundaries matter, and that respect is non-negotiable. I've learned to value myself and my time, and I've learned that sometimes walking away is the best thing you can do for your own peace of mind. Here's to better things, and better people, in the future. If this experience taught me anything, it's that I deserve nothing less. And for anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, you do too.